This city is overshadowed, not by this mountain, but by another city. This other city has a lot more tourist and media attention compared to it. Even though the city is big by itself, it doesn't really look that way when you put it next to its bigger neighbor. So what is this city? This would be none other than Colorado Springs. It's the 80th largest city in the US, which is pretty respectable. Two much more well-known state capitals are right beneath it in population. But what's the city that overshadows it? It would be none other than Denver. It's about 56 miles south of Denver along I-25, and Denver has about 4 times as many people as Colorado Springs, which also happens to be the same ratio of people between New York and Boston. Now, cities don't only have to be overshadowed by one city. Sometimes they get overshadowed by two, and this would be the case with Lakeland, Florida. It's 23 miles east of Tampa and 43 miles southwest of Orlando, and it's the 78th largest city in the US. And it's also not that far behind Boise and Dayton, which are two much more well-known cities. The things that Lakeland are known for are Legoland and lakes, maybe? No, just Legoland. Anyway, we're moving on to Allentown. Allentown is joining the overlooked by two cities category with Lakeland, except that Allentown is overshadowed by even bigger cities compared to Lakeland. And Allentown has to face none other than New York and Philadelphia. It's also the 69th largest city in the US, and that's even bigger than cities like Columbia or Charleston. And at this point in the list, the cities have decent skylines. We're rolling away and we're adding a new category. We're not going to be overshadowed by one city, not even two cities. Oh, and you're stupid to think that we're doing three, because if you think that, you're wrong. I don't know why you think it's that simple. Now, this category only applies to 2.5 states, and we're going to be looking at an example from this one. But before we reveal what city this is, I'll have to explain the category just a little. So basically, the category is when there's a big city that's also in a big state, but the big state has a lot of bigger cities inside of it, which is only true to these 2.5 states. So anyways, what is this city? The city would be none other than McAllen. It's too far from any other major city to be dumped into one of the two other categories. Heck, it's 110 miles from Corpus Christi and almost 200 miles from San Antonio. Now, McAllen just really isn't talked about as much compared to the four large cities in Texas, aka San Antonio, Austin, Houston, and Dallas. And it's also the 66th biggest city in the US, which is pretty good. And there's no shortage of other examples in Texas. We have Beaumont, Waco, Tyler, and many more that I could also talk about. And don't even get me started on how many cities get overshadowed in California. That'll have to be a video of its own sometime in the future. But anyway, we're going on to our final example, Springfield, Massachusetts. Now, this one's kind of a wild card. It could fit in the first category, the second category, or even the third category. The way it could fit in the first category is saying it gets overshadowed by Hartford. And the way it could fit in the second category is that it gets overshadowed by not only Hartford, but also Boston. Even though we're not in one of the 2.5 states, we could still maybe put it under the third example by saying it because it's overshadowed by the rest of the Northeast megalopolis. But we can all agree that Springfield's the type of guy that just watches everything happens and he never contributes to the conversation. Besides that, Springfield's the 88th largest city in the US, so not as big as the earlier examples, but still pretty big. It's now the end of the video. It's now time for you to subscribe, because subscribing is epic. You know what's also epic? Learning about the biggest suburbs in America.